What is Pablo Torre missing in this Los Angeles Clippers, Kawhi Leonard, and Steve Ballmer relationship? He's missing a direct link that will tie Steve Ballmer to giving him money off the books. And I'm going to get to that and set this up in a second. I just want to give Pablo his flowers. Harvard grad, he's absolutely showing it. He is putting on for sports journalists. And when you type up 2025, the biggest sports stories that have broke, it's going to be from him, no matter what Bill Simmons got to say. Okay, he's an actual real journalist, and he's proved that. From Bill Belichick, who's one of the highest paid state of North Carolina employees, to the NFLPA saga, which ended up having an executive director resign over amidst much scandal. And now he's moved on to Kawhi Leonard and Steve Ballmer. Now, let me just set this up briefly. There was a company called Aspire. Essentially, it was a lot like FTX. They had some fraud stuff going on with the co-founders. They got indicted. I believe one pled guilty and another one maybe pleading guilty. We'll see, or already has. And they do expect them to have some kind of jail time. They are essentially carried out a long con against particular investors, and their first major investor was the Los Angeles Clippers owner, Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer is a former Microsoft CEO, longtime Microsoft employee. He ran sales. He knows P&Ls really well, profit and losses really, really well. He can balance books. He can definitely sell. He was the head of sales, so he definitely knows product. He definitely knows consumers, and he definitely knows how to get deals done. Now, what Pablo has found that in bankruptcy filings, one of the biggest creditors, when you file bankruptcy, you have a list of creditors of who you owe, and one of the people they owe is a company called KL2 Aspire. Now, apparently the CEO, the member manager of this LLC, is somebody by the name of Kawhi Leonard, who absolutely is a superstar player for the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, what makes this unique? They owe him $7 million or so, whatever the number is. But when Pablo decided to dig even deeper, he found that there was a contract between Kawhi Leonard and Aspire for $28 million, which is very, very unique. Now, if you want to go and check out his channel, he breaks it all down, which I think he's done a great job on. If I give you a few highlights, I will. So, Kawhi Leonard signed with the Clippers. And now there's a major sponsor called Aspire that Los Angeles Clippers put on that court, put on their jerseys, all that other great stuff. Why would they do that? It's because they pledged to give the Clippers $300 million. Now, before that happened, $50 million went to Aspire from a person named Steve Ballmer. So Steve Ballmer gave them $50 million, according to Pablo. So with that $50 million, they not only had access, they had credibility, but what did they do? They started giving out endorsements. Now they gave out endorsements to a lot of different people. Drake, Robert Downey Jr., stuff like that. But they also gave a very unique endorsement deal to Kawhi Leonard, which is very unique because Kawhi Leonard is not necessarily the the most lively spokesman, to say the least. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What does Aspire do? I don't know what the hell they do. You look at all the documents. I've done research. Essentially, they're an environmentalist group that turned into a startup that wanted to go public. Whatever, bro. But I don't know how they actually made money. To me, the money they made is when investors gave them money. Nevertheless, so what does this have to do with Steve Ballmer? They got him to give $50 million, which is peculiar. So now they have the $50 million, and he turn around and give $28 million to Kawhi Leonard in a contract that is paid out as long as he is a member of the Los Angeles Clippers. The moment he is no longer a Los Angeles Clipper, they no longer have to pay him any money, which is really, really intriguing when you have an NBA salary cap and collective bargaining agreement that specifically prohibits any kind of extra income that a team or a team owner can provide to its players. So here we are. Pablo feels that he has a trove of evidence, a lot of evidence that says, hey, it looks like they're trying to skirt the salary cap, or they have skirted the salary cap and paid Kawhi upwards to $28 million. And he started a firestorm. He got motion. I'm talking about New York Times, on CNN, big, 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 all kinds of media coverage. And one of the things that were intriguing is Steve Ballmer has gone on the offensive. He was on ESPN saying, "Hey, these people con me," and put out their own statements. Some of the statements changed a bit, but essentially they're saying he had nothing to do with the endorsement deal. They don't know why they paid Kawhi $28 million. All kind of companies have endorsement deals. We don't vet every one of them, but it's kind of weird that you give a company $50 million and they turn around and then hand your star player 28 million of that 50. It's kind of weird. So you go through Pablo's roadmap, and he has really strong, compelling evidence. However, some pushback has happened, and one of the biggest pushbacks have been with Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban pushed back on Pablo on social media, and that's what started it all. They decided to get on the interview, to get on YouTube, and there's a fresh new episode of Pablo with Mark Cuban, and they debate on the evidence. And Mark gives his point of view. But the thing is that I love about Mark, and I don't think he gives enough credit for how smart he is. I don't think he was on the NBA side. I actually think he was on Pablo's side, and he gave him a lot of breadcrumbs. And this is what I'm giving you. This is the moment. Listen to me. The reason why Pablo's compelling evidence is not enough is because he does not have direct evidence. I Mark Cuban basically said in so many words, I don't give a shit whether he gave the company an investment. He doesn't give a shit if the employee said, yeah, we know all of this money is going to Kawhi because we need to circumvent the salary cap. We don't care that you have all these affidavits and declarations. That's essentially what he was saying. That's what Mark Cuban told Pablo. But what he was underlying, what he was saying under that, working, being a owner for 20 something years before he sold the majority stake, is he knows how the NBA investigators, and the NBA lawyers are going to look at this. They understand there's a whole bunch of circumstantial evidence. They get that. And NBA has opened up another investigation based on public perception on this pay arrangement, which is obviously weird. The person, by the way, speaking in this microphone completely understands Pablo's position. He doesn't have to persuade me at all. He was trying his best to persuade Mark Cuban, and Mark Cuban was giving him all of the feedback on what's missing. And if he does not get this, nothing's going to happen. The NBA is not going to be able to find that Ballmer did anything suspicious. So you can have all the employees, you can have all the data points on when the company was made and all this other stuff. You need a direct link that says Steve Ballmer directed these co-founders to give Kawhi Leonard money. And that's what he was missing. Well, how do you do that? It doesn't matter what kind of timeline you give out. It's what direct link. So let me give you an example. How did you get the company, Steve Ballmer? Well, get the team. If anybody remembers, it was from a guy, I'm not even going to mention his name. He was a horrible, despicable person. Decided to talk about Magic Johnson, and his voice literally was leaked. So it didn't matter what kind of relationships he had with his side pieces. It didn't matter that his wife found out about it and started suing his side pieces all around town. It did not matter that he would show up with a limo with 10 beautiful women and bring them in a locker room and say, hey, these are my players. None of that made a difference to the NBA owners or to the NBA commissioner. What made the difference by far, that got everything over the line. Don't get me wrong, the circumstantial evidence helped, but what got him over the line was that video leaking, or that audio leaking of him talking so poorly about Magic Johnson and making different racial remarks. The NBA players would not stand for it. That is what it took. Now, it's funny, it's the same franchise, and it's the person who bought the franchise from the last person. Yes, I understand there's circumstantial evidence because Ballmer's been fined for this before. He went after DeAndre Jordan, and apparently there was a fine of him trying to get him a Lexus endorsement to come back to the Clippers or whatever the case may be. That is true. So he has it in his past. Again, he is a salesman. He's a big part of Microsoft's rise. He knows how to get deals done, and he understands that there are different dynamics. Now, here's the biggest thing I want Pablo to understand, and I hope he hears this, and if not, it's fine. You're dealing with not only just an owner. Most of the owners, most of the governors, they're rich people, they're wealthy people, but this is different. He's the one of the wealthy. I think he's the wealthiest sports owner in the world. He has, or definitely in the United States, he has over 150 something billion. Meaning, when NBA lawyers are in there talking and they're looking at all of this evidence, well, they're going to say, what is the direct link? And if there's no direct link and we move on, he has enough money. He does not care. He will bring the NBA in court. He will bring every owner in court. He will bring everything he knows in the court. He does not care. It's nothing but a write off. I got $20 million in attorney fees. So what? If I'm worth 150 billion. He was talking on the other day on a podcast. I believe he said his Microsoft dividend is $1 billion per year. That he can afford the legal fight. So when you're looking at it and you're like, dang, what else could there be? What else do I need to get to convince people? Mark Cuban was simply saying, you need a direct link. That's what you're missing. We understand the persuasive argument you're doing. Pablo very much sounded like a prosecutor laying out his case, which I can appreciate. But in that same breath, Mark was saying this is not a court of law. The NBA owners, the NBA attorneys, the NBA investigators, the commissioner, who is an attorney, is going to say, where's the direct link? And not hearsay. This is it. Now, Steve Ballmer's too smart to put that in the email. I guarantee it. So here's the thing. He knew those guys' credibility was shot as soon as they got indicted. There's a movie called Enemy of the State, which I love. It's about Will Smith being a labor lawyer. And John Voight, who's a despicable person in the movie and a despicable person in life, essentially he goes on a rant and says, yeah, I'm tired of this circumstantial stuff. If this comes out, I need to make sure his credibility is damaged. He's talking about Will Smith. His credibility needs to be damaged. He's seen people who've committed horrible crimes walk because the witness was not credible, because they were some kind of worker of the night. And hey, it's my word against yours. The only people that may have that direct link to Steve Ballmer are the co-founders, and they just got indicted and they just pled guilty to fraud. And he is already distancing himself from that. And he's going to say, see, they could say all these things that they want. I know that I've never been in trouble in my life. I've helped build this multi-trillion-dollar company with Microsoft. Who are you going to believe? And that's what he was trying to tell you. Now, the other thing I want to get out of here and saying this, Mark Cuban was trying to tell you, which you kind of admitted to in your podcast, Pablo. He kept trying to tell you why 28 million. Why 28 million? He kept saying that 2 or 3 times. He was hoping you would pick up on it. So you didn't necessarily pick up on it, but you mentioned that a reporter in Boston picked up on it. So essentially, it's a $48 million deal. They found out an extra 20. The extra 20 mil was basically in stock. So it was a $48 million deal and not a $28 million deal. So Ballmer gives Aspire 50 million. They give Kawhi 28 million in a contract. Apparently, they gave him 20 mil in stock, and then they have that 2 mil left over. That does sound like a convenience fee, doesn't it? That does sound like a processing fee, doesn't it? So I'm giving you 50. Here's 2 mil, and you get to do what you need to do. But you need to make sure this player gets paid and stays on my brand new arena, keeps coming to my team, and continues to compete for a championship and have players come or want to come play with him. That sounds a whole lot more plausible. It really does. Because when you look at Aspire and look what kind of metrics they had and what kind of money they were going to make, that's a negligible amount to 150 billion is 2 million. Like, okay, here's 2 million, but since you're here, you could be my proxy. So really this 48 million is to, be funneled to someone. Now, if the stock goes crazy, the company goes crazy, that's great. You get to keep all those extra profits, but this 48 mil is going to this player, and here goes 2 million to do it. You acknowledge that, and then you said Mark Cuban, said, hey, smiley face, whatever. But he's smarter. You got to go back and look at that interview. He was really telling you, giving you a lot of game, a lot of insight on what happens in those investigation boardrooms. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Thank y'all so much for staying with me and Heritage Sports.